The wrench slipped from Roy's hand and clattered against the metal floor. He cursed under his breath and wiped the sweat from his forehead. 3 hours inside this heating duct, and he still could not find the problem. The repair station floated in empty space like a giant metal ring, and somewhere in its guts, a coolant line kept failing. Roy crawled backward out of the narrow passage and sat on the deck. His jumpsuit was covered in grease, and his knees ached. 8 years of working on alien ships had taught him one thing. Every species built their machines differently, and most of them made no sense to human eyes. The comm unit on his belt crackled. "Bennett, we need you in Base 7. Priority job," Roy groaned. His shift was supposed to end an hour ago. "What kind of job?" "Dravine transport. Emergency repairs. You are the only one who will touch it." Roy stood up fast. Dravine ships were rare. Most mechanics refused to work on them because the technology was half biological, half machine. Organic circuits that pulsed like veins. Metal that seemed to breathe. It was unsettling. "On my way," he said. Base 7 was on the other side of the station. Roy took the express lift and tried to remember what he knew about the Dravine. Dragon-like aliens. Ancient. Proud. They kept to themselves and rarely visited common space. Their ships were grown as much as built, seeds planted in special forges that took decades to mature. The bay doors opened and Roy stopped walking. The Dravine ship was massive and curved like a living creature. Its hull gleamed with scales that shifted color in the light. A ramp extended to the deck, and several Dravine stood at the base. They were taller than humans, covered in scales that ranged from deep crimson to burnished gold. Wings folded against their backs. Eyes that glowed faintly in the dim bay. One of them stepped forward. "You are the mechanic?" Roy nodded. His mouth felt dry. "Yes, Roy Bennett. What is the problem?" "Coolant system failure in the nursery section. Our engineer died during the jump. We cannot repair it ourselves." The Dravine's voice was deep and rumbling. "Can you help?" "I could try," Roy said. "Show me where." The interior of the ship was warm and smelled like hot stone. The walls were not quite metal and not quite flesh. They pulsed with a faint heartbeat. Roy followed the Dravine through narrow corridors until they reached a sealed door. Beyond this point is the nursery. Temperature is rising. "We have young inside. Eggs." The Dravine looked at Roy with eyes that seemed to see right through him. "Be careful, human. This section is sacred to us." Roy nodded and stepped through the door. The heat hit him immediately. It was like walking into an oven. He could see the coolant lines running along the ceiling, and one of them was leaking. Not coolant, though. Something thicker. Something that hissed when it hit the hot air that he moved carefully between rows of egg chambers. Each one held a single egg about the size of his torso. They glowed from within with soft light. Beautiful and strange, Roy found the leak. A coupling had cracked, and the biological fluid inside was vaporizing. He pulled out his tools and started working. Simple fix, really. Replace the coupling, seal the line, check the pressure. He had done this 100 times on human ships. Then the alarm started screaming. Red light flooded the nursery. Roy looked up and saw flames spreading across the ceiling. The leaking fluid had ignited somehow. Fire raced along the walls, consuming everything. "Emergency lockdown initiated," a mechanical voice said. "Evacuate immediately." Roy ran for the door, but it was already sealed. Heavy blast doors had dropped into place. He was trapped. The fire spread faster now, eating through the organic walls. Smoke filled the air. Then he heard it. A cry, high-pitched and desperate. Not mechanical, not human, something else. Roy turned and saw one of the egg chambers had cracked open. A tiny dragon, no bigger than a house cat, crawled out onto the hot floor. Its scales were pale blue and its wings were still wet. It cried again, a sound that cut through the roar of flames. The fire was spreading toward the hatchling. Roy could see the protective chamber failing, melting under the heat. The little dragon tried to move, but stumbled. Too young, too weak. Every instinct told Roy to run, to find another way out, to save himself. Station protocol said to evacuate and seal this section. Let the automatic systems handle it. But that sound, that crying. Roy grabbed a thermal blanket from an emergency kit on the wall. He wrapped it around himself and ran into the flames. The heat was incredible. His skin burned. His lungs screamed for clean air. He could not see through the smoke. His hand found the hatchling. It was hot to the touch, scales rough against his palm. Roy scooped it up and held it against his chest under the blanket. The little dragon stopped crying and pressed close to him. Roy turned to run, but a beam fell from the ceiling. It caught him across the shoulder, and he went down hard. Pain exploded through his body. The hatchling squeaked in fear. "Get up," Roy thought. "Get up, or you both die here," he crawled. One hand holding the hatchling, one hand pulling him forward. The flames were everywhere now. His vision darkened at the edges. Not from smoke, from pain, from burning. Then hands grabbed him, strong hands, pulling him backward, through the flames, through the smoke, out into cool air. Roy collapsed on the deck outside the nursery. The hatchling was still pressed against his chest, trembling but alive. Dravine voices shouted around him. Someone sprayed fire suppressant into the burning section. Roy looked down at his arms. The skin was red and blistered. His hands were burned black in places. He should be screaming, but he felt strangely numb. The little dragon looked up at him with eyes like molten gold. It made a soft chirping sound. "You saved her," a Dravine voice said from somewhere far away. "You ran into fire for one of our young." Roy tried to answer, but darkness swallowed him whole. When he opened his eyes again, everything was white. Clean, quiet, a medical bay. He tried to sit up, but his body would not cooperate. Every muscle ached. "Do not move," a voice said. "You are healing, but it will take time." Roy turned his head. An old Dravine sat beside his bed. Scales like weathered copper. Eyes that held centuries of knowledge. "The hatchling," Roy whispered. "She lives because of you. Her name is Pip. She will not leave your side." The Dravine gestured to the foot of the bed. Roy looked down. The little dragon was curled up on the blanket near his feet, sleeping peacefully. "You have been unconscious for 3 days," the Dravine continued. "Your burns should have killed you, but they are healing, faster than our doctors expected." Roy looked at his arms. The burned skin was gone. In its place were strange patterns, lines that glowed faintly in the dim light. They curved across his forearms and disappeared under his medical gown. "What is this?" Roy asked. The old Dravine leaned forward. His expression was serious. "Reverend, you're marked now, human. The Covenant has chosen you." Roy spent 2 more days in the medical bay, learning things that made no sense. His body temperature had increased by 3 degrees, but the doctors said he was healthy. The marks on his skin were not tattoos or scars. They were alive somehow, pulsing with faint light that matched his heartbeat. The little dragon, Pip, refused to leave. She slept on his bed and cried when nurses tried to move her. When Roy woke from nightmares about the fire, she would press her small head against his hand, and the dreams would fade. On the 3rd day, the old Dravine returned. His name was Brightscale, and he walked with the authority of someone used to being obeyed. "You can understand me now," Brightscale said. Not a question, a statement. Roy realized the Dravine was speaking his own language, not the common trade tongue everyone used on the station. Somehow, Roy understood every word. "How is that possible?" Roy asked. "The mark changes you, gives you gifts. Understanding is the first." Brightscale sat in the chair beside the bed. "Do you know what you have done, Roy Bennett? I saved a hatchling from a fire. You sacrificed yourself for one of our young without thinking of reward or recognition. You did not know what she was. You only heard her cry and ran into flames." Brightscale touched one of the marks on Roy's arm. "This is the Covenant, an ancient bond between Dravine and worthy souls. It has not been granted in over 4,000 years." Roy pulled his arm back. The mark felt warm where Brightscale had touched it. "I did not ask for this. I just did what anyone would do." "No," Brightscale said firmly. "Most beings would have followed protocol. Evacuated, sealed this section, let the fire burn. You chose differently." He gestured to Pip, who was watching them with bright eyes. "She has bonded to you now. In her mind, in her heart, you are her clutch parent. That bond is permanent." Roy looked at the little dragon. She chirped and climbed onto his lap, curling up like a cat. Her scales were warm against his skin. "What does that mean?" Roy asked. It means you are responsible for her until she reaches maturity. 20 years by your human counting. It means you carry diplomatic immunity across all Dravine space. It means you have responsibilities you do not yet understand. Brightscale stood, and it means others will fear you or try to use you. I'm just a mechanic, Roy said quietly. You were just a mechanic. Now you're marked by dragons. Brightscale walked to the window that looked out over the station. News has already spread. Other species know a human carries the covenant. Some are fascinated. Others are afraid. The Dravine are not well-liked in all corners of the galaxy. We have long memories, and we do not forgive easily. Roy felt a knot form in his stomach. What do I do? You come with me to Ashenfell, our homeworld. You learn what it means to carry that mark. You protect Pip as she grows. Brightscale turned back to face him. Or you refuse. I can remove the bond, but it will likely kill the hatchling. She has imprinted on you too deeply. The room was quiet except for Pip's soft breathing. Roy thought about his life on the station. Simple work, simple routines, sending money back to Earth for his sister and her kids. Nothing special, nothing important. Then he thought about running into those flames, about the sound of Pip crying, about how his body had moved before his brain could catch up. How long do I have to decide? Roy asked. 3 days. Then we depart for Ashenfell with or without you. Brightscale left, and Roy was alone with Pip. The hatchling looked up at him with eyes that seemed far too intelligent for something so small. You are a lot of trouble, Roy said softly. Pip chirped and nuzzled his hand. Over the next 2 days, Roy tried to go back to his normal life. He returned to his quarters, a small room with a bed and a desk, and not much else. Pip followed him everywhere. When he tried to work in the repair bays, she sat on his shoulder and watched everything he did. Other mechanics gave him strange looks. Some asked to see the marks. Others kept their distance like he carried a disease. His supervisor called him into the office. Bennett, I need to know if you're staying or going. If you're marked by the Dravine, you cannot just work here like nothing happened. It is a security issue, a diplomatic issue. Roy had not thought about it that way. I have not decided yet. We'll decide fast. Station command is getting nervous. That night, Roy sat in his quarters and pulled up messages from Earth. His sister had sent 3 in the past week. Her kids were doing well in school. They had saved enough to buy passage to a colony world called Haven's Reach. Better opportunities there, clean air and open spaces. Roy had been saving money to visit them. Maybe even move to Haven's Reach himself one day. Retire from station work and live somewhere with Real sky overhead. Pip climbed onto the desk and looked at the screen. She tilted her head like she was trying to understand. That is my family, Roy said. I was supposed to help them. Pip made a sad sound and pressed against his hand. Roy thought about the choice in front of him. Keep his simple life and let Pip die. Or leave everything behind and step into something unknown. The marks on his arms began to glow brighter. They felt warm, almost comforting, like they were trying to tell him something. Roy made his decision. The next morning, he found Brightscale at the Dravine ship. I will come with you. I will protect Pip. Just tell me what I need to do. Brightscale smiled, showing rows of sharp teeth. Good. We leave within the hour. Gather what you need. Roy packed his few belongings into a single bag. Tools mostly. A few photos. A jacket his sister had given him years ago. As he sealed his quarters for the last time, station security approached him. Roy Bennett, you need to come with us. There has been a development. What kind of development? The security officer looked uncomfortable. We received an encrypted message from the Shalene Collective. They have placed a bounty on you. A large one. They claim you stole or faked the mark somehow. They want you brought to them for trial. Roy felt ice run through his veins. The Shalene? Why would they care about me? We do not know, but we cannot protect you here. Station policy is to remain neutral. If the Shalene send ships, we have to cooperate. Brightscale appeared in the corridor, moving with surprising speed for something so large. The human is under Dravine protection now. You will not touch him. The security officer backed away. We are not trying to arrest him. We are warning him. The bounty went out an hour ago. Every mercenary and hunter in 3 sectors will be looking for him now. Roy looked at Pip riding on his shoulder. The little dragon seemed oblivious to the danger. "Then we leave now," Brightscale said, "before anyone tries to collect." Roy followed the old Dravine to the ship, his heart pounding. 3 days ago, he had been a simple mechanic. Now he was running from bounty hunters, marked by ancient magic, and responsible for a dragon hatchling. The ship launched from the station and jumped into faster-than-light travel. Roy watched the stars blur past the window and wondered what he had gotten himself into. Pip chirped happily and fell asleep in his lap, completely trusting. Roy touched the marks on his arms and felt their warmth. Whatever came next, he would face it, for her. The journey to Ashenfell took 6 days through routes that did not appear on any galactic map. Roy spent most of that time with Pip, watching her grow stronger each day. She was already twice the size she had been on the station, her scales turning from pale blue to deep sapphire. Brightscale taught Roy basic Dravine customs during the trip: how to greet elders with respect, how to speak about honor and sacrifice, how to move through their cities without giving offense. "You will be tested," Brightscale said one evening as they sat in the ship's common area. "The council will want to see if your marks are real, if your bond with Pip is genuine." "How do they test that?" Roy asked. "Fire. You will walk through the sacred flames. If the marks are false, if you somehow stole them or faked them, the flames will burn you to ash. If they are real, you will pass through unharmed." Roy felt his stomach drop. More fire. "Great. You survived once already. The marks protect you now. Trust them." Roy looked at his arms where the glowing patterns shifted slowly. He still did not understand what they were or how they worked, just that they felt like a part of him now, as natural as breathing. On the 7th day, they arrived at Ashenfell. The planet was nothing like Earth. Volcanoes dotted the landscape, rivers of lava flowing between mountains of black stone. Cities were carved into the sides of calderas, buildings that seemed to grow from the rock itself. The sky was orange with volcanic ash, and the air shimmered with heat. The ship landed in the capital city, a massive structure built around an active volcano. Dravine moved through the streets on foot and wing. Some were small like Pip would be when grown. Others were enormous, the size of small buildings, their scales gleaming like metal. Roy walked down the ramp with Pip on his shoulder. The heat hit him immediately, but it was not unbearable. The marks on his skin seemed to adjust somehow, keeping him cool. Hundreds of Dravine had gathered to watch his arrival. They stared at him with expressions he could not read. Curiosity, suspicion, wonder. Brightscale led him through the crowd to an enormous hall carved into the mountainside. Inside, a council of elder Dravine waited. 12 of them, each one ancient and powerful. Their scales were scarred from centuries of life. Their eyes glowed like hot coals. "Approach," one of them said. Roy walked forward, trying not to show fear. Pip chirped nervously and pressed close to his neck. "You are the human who bears the mark," another elder said. "The one who saved a hatchling from fire." "Yes," Roy said. His voice sounded small in the vast chamber. "Show us." Roy rolled up his sleeves. The marks glowed brighter in response to the elder's attention. Patterns that seemed to tell a story in a language he could not read, but somehow understood. Sacrifice, protection, bond. The elders leaned forward, studying the marks carefully. One of them stood and approached Roy. She was smaller than the others, but her presence filled the room. "I am a Shenwing, speaker of the council. These marks are genuine. We can see that." She touched one gently, and Roy felt a shock run through him. "But we must know if you are worthy to carry them." "How do I prove that?" Roy asked. "The trial of fire. You will enter the sacred flames tomorrow at dawn. If you emerge, you will be recognized as truly marked. If you do not..." She did not need to finish. Roy nodded. He had known this was coming. "I will do it." "Good. Until then, you will stay in the Hall of Guardians. It is a place for marked beings, such as yourself." Guards led Roy through more corridors to a smaller building attached to the main hall. Inside were rooms that looked lived in once, but now stood empty. Dust covered the furniture. No one had been here in a long time. "You are the only marked being alive right now," one guard explained. "The last one died 300 years ago, a warrior from a species that no longer exists." Roy felt a chill despite the heat. He was truly alone in this. That night, he could not sleep. Pip curled up next to him, but even her warmth could not chase away his worry. He kept thinking about the flames, about burning, about dying so far from home at dawn. Guards came to take him to the trial. They gave him simple robes to wear and nothing else. No protection, no tools, just cloth and his own marked skin. The sacred flames were in a chamber deep beneath the city. Roy walked down endless stairs carved from volcanic rock. The temperature increased with every step. Sweat ran down his back, but the marks kept him from burning. The chamber was circular with walls of black stone. In the center was a pit filled with fire. Not normal fire. This burned white hot and seemed to move with purpose, reaching up like grasping hands. Hundreds of Dravine filled the viewing galleries above. They had come to watch him succeed or fail. A Shenwing stood at the edge of the pit. Roy Bennett, you will walk through these flames. They are not ordinary fire. They burn the soul as well as the body. They will show us your true heart, your real intentions. If you carry the mark through theft or deception, they will know. Are you ready? Roy looked at Pip. She was being held by Brightscale in the gallery, her eyes wide with fear. She made a crying sound that broke his heart. I am ready, Roy said. He stepped toward the flames. Heat washed over him, but the marks on his skin began to glow brighter. They spread, the patterns growing across his chest and back, covering him in light. Roy walked into the fire. Pain exploded through every nerve. Not physical pain, something deeper. The flames dug into his memories, his thoughts, his feelings. They showed him everything, running into the burning nursery. The sound of Pip crying, his hands grabbing her small body, the beam falling, the pain of burning flesh. His only thought, save her, save her, save her. The flames showed his life before. Working on the station, sending money to his sister, dreaming of simple things, never asking for glory or recognition, just trying to help where he could. They showed his choice to come here, to leave everything behind, not for power or fame, but because a small dragon needed him and he could not say no. The flames pulled back. Roy stood in the center of the pit, unharmed. The fire swirled around him like a protective curtain, but did not touch him. His marks blazed with golden light, brighter than the flames themselves. The chamber erupted in sound. Dravine voices raised in shock, and awed out of Shenwing's voice cut through the noise. He is not just marked, he is firstborn marked. The ancient text spoke of this. One who would come in time of need. One who would unite the scattered peoples. Roy stumbled out of the pit, his legs shaking. He did not feel like someone special. He felt like a mechanic who had gotten very lucky. Brightscale brought Pip to him, and the little dragon launched herself into his arms, chirping frantically. Roy held her close and felt the marks settle back into their normal patterns. What does firstborn mark mean? Roy asked. A Shenwing looked at him with an expression that might have been pity. It means your life just became much more complicated, Roy Bennett. And it means the Shalene have every reason to fear you. Before Roy could ask what she meant, an explosion rocked the chamber. Stone rained from the ceiling. Screams filled the air. Through the smoke and dust, figures in dark armor poured into the room. They carried weapons that hummed with energy. Shalene assassins, someone shouted. Roy pulled Pip close and ran for cover as energy bolts tore through the crowd. His peaceful trial had just become a battlefield. Roy ran through smoke and chaos with Pip clutched against his chest. Energy bolts sizzled past his head, burning holes in the stone walls. Dravine guards fought back against the assassins with claws and flame, but the attackers had surprise on their side. This way, Brightscale appeared through the smoke, his scales scorched. He grabbed Roy's arm and pulled him toward a side passage. We must get Pip to safety. They ran through narrow corridors while the sounds of battle echoed behind them. Roy's heart pounded and his marks fell hot against his skin, almost burning. Pip whimpered and pressed her face into his shoulder. The passage opened into a medical sanctum, a quiet place with healing pools and soft light. Several Dravine healers looked up in alarm as they burst through the door. Seal the entrance, Brightscale ordered. We have wounded coming. Heavy doors ground shut just as an explosion shook the building. Dust fell from the ceiling. Roy set Pip down carefully and checked her over. She seemed unhurt but terrified. "What is happening?" Roy asked. "The Shalene sent assassins to kill you before you could be recognized by the council. They failed, but they're trying to cause as much damage as possible on their way out." Brightscale's eyes glowed with anger. "This is an act of war." More Dravine arrived, some carrying wounded on stretchers. Roy saw burns and cuts and worse. One young dragon had a wing torn nearly off. The healers worked frantically, their claws gentle despite their size. Then Roy saw her. A small female dragon, not much bigger than Pip, bleeding from a dozen wounds. She had thrown herself in front of a group of hatchlings when the ceiling collapsed. Saved them, but crushed herself in the process. "Help her!" Roy shouted. The healers shook their heads. "Too much damage. We can ease her pain, but we cannot save her." Something inside Roy snapped. He pushed past the healers and knelt beside the dying dragon. His marks began to glow without him willing it. Heat poured from his hands. "What are you doing?" Brightscale asked. "I do not know," Roy said honestly. His hands moved on their own, touching the dragon's wounds. The marks spread from his skin to hers, golden light flowing between them. He felt her pain like it was his own. Felt her life fading to... Oh, Roy thought. "Not today. You saved those kids. You did not get to die for it." The light intensified. The healers stepped back, shielding their eyes. Roy felt something pull from deep inside him, some reserve of strength he did not know he had. The marks drank it eagerly and poured it into the wounded dragon. Her breathing steadied. The worst wounds began to close. Not fully healed, but no longer fatal. Roy collapsed backward, exhausted. His vision swam, and his body felt like lead. "Impossible," one healer whispered. "The firstborn marked can share their life force with others. We thought it was just legend." Brightscale caught Roy before he hit the floor. "You fool. You could have killed yourself." "She saved children," Roy mumbled. "Like I saved Pip. Could not let her die for that." Pip climbed onto his chest and licked his face with her small tongue. The gesture made him smile despite everything. They let Roy rest for several hours while the battle outside was brought under control. When he woke, a Shenwing was sitting beside him. The council speaker looked older than before, tired in a way that went beyond physical. "The assassins are dead or captured," she said. "We lost 37 people. Civilians mostly." The Shalene wanted to make a statement. "What?" Roy asked, sitting up slowly. Everything ached. "Why do they hate me so much? I am just a mechanic. You are the firstborn marked. Ancient prophecies speak of one like you appearing in times of great change. One who would broker alliances between species, create new trade routes, unite peoples against common threats." A Shenwing stood and walked to the window. The Shalene Collective controls most major trade in this sector. They profit from division, from species that do not trust each other. A united galaxy would destroy their power. Roy thought about that. "So, they want to kill me to protect their profits?" "Yes, and they will try again." Brightscale entered the room, his expression serious. "We have interrogated one of the captured assassins. The Shalene have a fleet gathering at the edge of our space. They are preparing for war unless we hand you over." "Then give me to them," Roy said. "I will not let your people die for me." "No." The voice was small but fierce. Pip stood on the bed, her scales bristling. She might be young, but her eyes held determination. "You are mine. My clutch parent. No one takes you." Roy was shocked. He had never heard Pip speak before. Her voice was high and clear, speaking Dravine perfectly, as Shenwing smiled. "She has found her voice protecting you." How fitting. The smile faded. "But she is right. We do not surrender our own to threats, especially not someone marked by the Covenant." "There is another option," Brightscale said. "We can offer Roy a way out. Remove the mark, sever the bond, give him a new identity. He returns to being a simple human. Pip, he cannot finish, would die," the Shenwing said quietly. "The bond is too strong now, especially after Roy shared his life force to save another. Breaking it would kill her." Roy looked at Pip. The little dragon was shaking, but trying to be brave. He thought about everything that had happened. The fire, the marks, the trial, the attack. All of it because he heard a baby crying and could not walk away. "I am not leaving her," Roy said. "Not ever. I made a choice when I ran into those flames. I am making it again now." A Shinwing nodded like she expected that answer. "Then we must make you strong enough to survive what is coming. You saved one of our warriors today with your gift, but you nearly killed yourself doing it. You must learn control." "There is more," Brightscale said. "We discovered something about Pip while running genetic tests after the attack. She is not a common hatchling, Roy. She is the last surviving member of the royal bloodline. Her clutch was destroyed in a plague 10 years ago. We thought they were all dead." Roy stared at Pip, who looked back at him with innocent eyes. "Royal? You mean she's a princess? She'll be queen one day, if she lives long enough to mature. Which means you are not just her guardian. You are regent to the future throne of our people." Roy lay back on the bed and covered his face with his hands. A week ago, he was fixing coolant lines. Now he was regent to dragon royalty and marked for death by an entire mercantile empire. "I really should have just evacuated that day," he muttered. Pip climbed onto his chest and chirped. Roy felt her warmth and her trust and knew he would make the same choice again no matter what. Over the next 3 days, Roy trained with Brightscale. He learned to control the heat that flowed through his marks, learned to sense danger before it struck, learned to share his strength without draining himself completely. A Shinwing came to him on the 4th day. "The Galactic Assembly has called for a meeting. Every major species will be there. The Shalene have accused you of being a fraud, of stealing the marks through illegal technology. You must go before the Assembly and prove your authenticity." "How do I do that?" Roy asked. "By being exactly what you are. Honest, brave, willing to sacrifice for others." She handed him formal robes in Dravine style. "You will represent our people there. Show the galaxy what it means to carry the Covenant." Roy looked at the robes, then at Pip sleeping peacefully in the corner. He thought about his sister on Haven's Reach, about the simple life he left behind, about the impossible situation he was in now. "When do we leave?" he asked. "Tomorrow." "And Roy?" A Shinwing met his eyes. "The Shalene have invoked an ancient law, trial by combat. If you refuse, you are automatically judged guilty. If you accept, you must face their champion in unarmed combat before the entire galaxy." Roy felt ice run through his veins. He had never been a fighter, just a mechanic with a good heart. "I will do it," he said, because what choice did he have? Pip opened one eye and looked at him. Her expression seemed to say, "I believe in you." Roy hoped that would be enough. The Galactic Assembly Station was enormous, a city floating in space where thousands of species gathered to debate laws and settle disputes. Roy stood at the window of the Dravine ship, watching it grow larger as they approached. Pip sat on his shoulder, bigger now than when they first met, but still small enough to perch there comfortably. She nuzzled his cheek, sensing his nervousness. "You will do well," Brightscale said from behind him. "Just tell the truth. Show them what you are. A scared mechanic pretending to be something important?" Roy asked. "A man who ran in a fire to save a child. That is all you need to be." The station docking procedures took hours. Security scanned the ship 3 times. Armed guards escorted them through corridors packed with beings from across the galaxy. Roy saw species he had never encountered before. Some walked on legs, others floated, a few seemed to exist in multiple dimensions at once. Everyone stared at him, at the marks on his skin, at Pip riding his shoulder. Whispers followed them like shadows. The assembly chamber was a massive amphitheater with seats rising in circles around a central platform. Representatives from hundreds of worlds sat in their designated sections. At the front, raised above everyone else, sat the Council of Arbiters who judged disputes. The Shalene delegation sat in prime position. They were insect-like beings with hard shells and multiple arms. Their leader, a large male with scars across his carapace, watched Roy with compound eyes that reflected no emotion. Roy took his place on the platform. Pip jumped down to stand beside him, her small chest puffed out bravely. "This assembly is called to order," the head arbiter announced. Her species had translucent skin, and Roy could see organs moving beneath. "We gathered to hear accusations against the human Roy Bennett. The Shalene Collective claims he has falsified the Dravine Mark of Covenant through illegal technological means. The Shalene leader stood. We have evidence that this human used stolen biomodification equipment to create the appearance of marking. He seeks to gain power and influence through deception. We demand he be turned over to us for proper investigation. Murmurs ran through the chamber. Several species nodded in agreement. Roy noticed most of them wore badges showing Shalene trade partnerships. A Shinwing rose to speak for the Dravine. The marks are genuine. Our council has verified them. Roy Bennett saved a royal hatchling through selfless sacrifice. He has passed the trial of sacred flames. No technology can fake such things. So you claim, the Shalene leader hissed. But Dravine are known for their pride. Perhaps you were deceived. Perhaps you want so desperately to find a marked being after 4,000 years that you see what you wish to see. The arbiters conferred quietly. Finally, the head arbiter spoke. Roy Bennett, you may present evidence of your authenticity. Roy stepped forward. His heart hammered, but he kept his voice steady. I'm not a scientist or a diplomat. I cannot explain how the marks work. I can only tell you what happened. He described the fire. Hearing Pip cry, running through flames without thinking, waking 3 days later with these marks on his skin. He showed them his arms, rolling up his sleeves so everyone could see the glowing patterns. These are not tattoos. They are not implants. They are part of me now, as much as my own blood. Roy looked up at the thousands of faces watching him. I did not ask for this. I did not want power or fame. I just heard a baby crying and could not walk away. Pretty words, the Shalene leader said. But words prove nothing. We demand physical verification. The arbiters nodded. Scans will be performed by neutral parties. For the next hour, Roy stood while various species scanned him with equipment he did not understand. They examined his skin, his blood, his genetic code. Pip stayed close, growling at anyone who got too rough. Finally, the technicians presented their findings. We detect no artificial implants. No technological manipulation. The patterns appear to be a form of symbiotic bioluminescence integrated at a cellular level. We have never seen anything like it, because it does not exist naturally, the Shalene leader insisted. It must be manufactured, or a new voice spoke from the gallery. It is exactly what the Dravine claim. A delegation of Quillen entered the chamber. They were silicon-based beings who looked like walking crystals. Their leader approached the platform. We are an ancient people. Our records go back 50,000 years. We have accounts of marked beings from various species throughout history. The descriptions match exactly what we see on this human. The Quillen gestured to Roy's marks. This is the Covenant, real and undeniable. Other species began to speak up, some in Roy's defense. Others remained loyal to the Shalene through economic necessity. The chamber descended into chaos as arguments broke out. The head arbiter called for order. The Shalene have invoked trial by combat. This is their right under ancient law. Roy Bennett, do you accept? Roy looked at Brightscale, who nodded slightly. No choice. I accept, Roy said. The chamber fell silent. The Shalene leader made a clicking sound that might have been laughter. Excellent. Our champion will face you in 3 days. Una med combat. No weapons. No arme. Fight until submission or death. A massive door opened at the far end of the chamber. Something huge walked through. The Shalene champion was a cyborg, part organic, part machine. It stood 3 meters tall with arms like steel beams and eyes that glowed red. Scars covered its body from countless battles. Roy felt his courage drain away. He was a mechanic. He fixed things. He did not fight monsters. Pip pressed against his leg and made a determined sound. In his mind, through their bond, he felt her absolute faith in him. The next 3 days passed in a blur. Brightscale tried to teach Roy to fight, but it was hopeless. Roy was too slow, too weak, too inexperienced. You cannot beat him with strength, Brightscale finally admitted. But the marks give you one advantage. You can endure. You can survive damage that would kill others. That is your path. Survive until what? Roy asked after another training session left him bruised and exhausted. Until he makes a mistake. Until he exhausts himself. until the galaxy sees that you do not quit no matter what. Roy understood. This was not about winning through violence. It was about proving his character, about showing that the marks chose correctly. On the third day, the assembly chamber was reconfigured for combat. A circular platform in the center. No videos. Billions watching across the galaxy through live broadcast. Roy walked onto the platform wearing simple clothes. No protection. His marks glowed faintly in the harsh lights. The champion entered from the opposite side. Up close, it was even more terrifying. Hydraulic muscles, reinforced skeleton, combat protocols running through artificial synapses. The head arbiter spoke. This is trial by combat. Fight until one submits or cannot continue. No outside interference. No merci. Begin. The champion moved faster than something that large should be able to. Its fist caught Roy in the ribs and sent him flying across the platform. Pain exploded through his chest. Probably broken bones. Roy got up. His marks blazed brighter, already working to heal the damage. The champion came again. Faster. Harder. Each hit drove Roy down. Each time he got back up, the crowd watched in silence. Roy could not fight back, could not match the champion's strength. All he could do was stand again and again. His nose broke. Ribs cracked. One eye swelled shut. But the marks kept healing him just enough to continue. Stay down, the champion finally shouted. Why you keep standing? Roy spit blood and smiled through broken teeth. Because that is what the marks mean. We endure. We protect. We do not quit. He stood again. The champion roared in frustration and charged. But exhaustion was setting in. The cyborg had fought for an hour straight, burning through power reserves. Its movements grew slower. Roy just stood there, bleeding, broken, refusing to fall. Finally, the champion stopped. Its artificial lungs heaved. Power cells warning lights flashing. Roy took one step forward, then another. Not attacking, just advancing slowly. The champion stepped back. The crowd erupted in shocked noise. The Shalene champion, undefeated in 100 battles, was retreating from a battered human mechanic. I submit, the champion said quietly. You have won. Roy collapsed to his knees, every part of him screaming in pain. But through the bond, he felt Pip's joy, heard the crowd's amazed reaction. The head arbiter spoke. The trial is concluded. Roy Bennett has proven his worth through endurance. The marks are declared authentic. All accusations are dismissed. Brightscale rushed onto the platform to help Roy up. Pip climbed onto his shoulders, chirping frantically. Roy had won, not through strength, but through simple stubborn refusal to give up. AS medical teams treated his wounds. A new message came through on priority channels. A distress call from the edge of known space that a human colony under attack. Roy looked at the message coordinates, and his blood went cold. Haven's reach. His sister's world. Roy stared at the distress signal with his one good eye. The other was still swollen shut from the fight. His sister's voice came through the static, terrified and desperate. Anyone listening? Haven's reach is under attack. Unknown ships using plasma weapons. They are burning everything. We have civilians trapped. Children, please, if anyone can hear this, we need help. If there is someone out there who bears the mark of dragons, we need you now. The message cut off in a burst of interference. Roy tried to stand, but his legs would not cooperate. Brightscale caught him before he fell. You cannot go anywhere in this condition. You need medical treatment. Rest. That is my family, Roy said. His voice came out harsh and broken. My sister. Her kids. I have to help them. A Shinwing appeared through the crowd of medical personnel. The Dravine do not involve ourselves in human conflicts. We have no obligation to help this colony. Roy looked at her with fury burning in his chest. Then I will go alone. You can barely walk, a Shinwing pointed out. You would die before reaching them. Pip jumped between them, scales bristling. Then we all die together. He is my clutch parent. Where he goes, I go. If the Dravine are too proud to help, then we do not need them. The little dragon's words rang through the medical bay. Several Dravine looked ashamed that a new voice spoke from the entrance. I will help. The Quillen leader from the assembly stepped forward. My people remember what it means to stand for others. We will send ships. Another voice. The wandering fleets will assist. Roy Bennett is human like us. We do not abandon our own. More species stepped forward. The coalition that formed during Roy's trial now gathered around him with offers of ships and weapons and aid. A Shenwing watched this happen with an unreadable expression. Finally, she sighed. The Dravine do not abandon those who carry the Covenant. We will send our battle fleet. But Roy, you must understand, if we investigate and find the attackers or who I think they are, this will be bigger than one colony. Who? Roy demanded. The Ashborn, renegade Dravine who rejected the Covenant centuries ago. They were exiled for unspeakable crimes. They survive by raiding worlds and taking what they need. Brightscale's expression was grim. If they have returned, it means they are hunting for something specific. Roy felt ice in his veins despite his fever. Me. They are hunting for me. For any marked being. They see the Covenant as weakness. They want to prove that strength alone matters, not sacrifice or compassion. A Shenwing placed a clawed hand on his shoulder. If we do this, we go to war against our own exiled people. Are you certain? Roy thought about his sister, about her kids who called him Uncle Roy in their messages, about all the families on Haven's Reach who just wanted peaceful lives. I am certain. Within hours, the largest fleet Roy had ever seen assembled near the station. Dravine battleships that looked like flying mountains. Quillen crystal vessels that bent light around them. Ships from a dozen other species, all coming together because one human mechanic had refused to quit. Roy stood on the bridge of the Dravine flagship, still bandaged and broken, but standing. Pip rode on his shoulder, big enough now that she had to duck her head under doorways. The jump to Haven's Reach took 3 days at maximum speed. Roy spent that time healing, the marks working overtime to repair his battered body. He also spent time communicating with the fleet, coordinating plans, learning the capabilities of each ship. He was not a military leader, but he understood logistics and organization from years of managing repair schedules. Those skills translated surprisingly well. When they dropped out of faster-than-light travel near Haven's Reach, the sight that greeted them made Roy's breath catch. The colony was burning. 3 Ashborn ships, smaller than the Dravine battleships, but bristling with weapons, circled the planet like predators. They were systematically destroying settlements, harvesting resources, taking prisoners. Attack formation, a Shenwing commanded. The coalition fleet spread out, surrounding the Ashborn Point. One of the enemy ships transmitted a message. Dravine battle fleet, you defend humans now? How far you have fallen? Give us the marked one and we will leave peacefully. Roy stepped forward to the communication console. I am Roy Bennett. I carry the mark. If you want me, come and take me. Laughter echoed through the channel. Brave words from a human. Very well. We accept. The Ashborn leader's ship broke away from the planet, accelerating toward the flagship. It was smaller but faster, weapons charging with deadly intent. Let them come, a Shenwing said. Shields up. All ships, protect the flagship. The battle began, space filled with weapons fire and explosions. The coalition ships fought with coordinated precision while the Ashborn relied on brutal power. Energy bolts tore through shields. Ships on both sides took damage. Roy watched helplessly from a bridge. This was not something he could fix with a wrench and determination. Then proximity alarms screamed. The Ashborn leader's ship had broken through the defenses. It was on a collision course with the flagship. Brace for impact, someone shouted. The ship shook as the Ashborn vessel slammed into their hull. Boarding pods punched through the armor. Armed Ashborn warriors poured into the corridors. They want me, Roy said. I will not let others die for me. He ran toward the breach point before anyone could stop him. Pip flew beside him, no longer small and helpless, but a young dragon with sharp claws and determination. They met the Ashborn in a corridor filled with smoke and sparking cables. The renegade Dravine were larger than normal ones, augmented with stolen technology and twisted by centuries of violence. Their leader stepped forward. So the marked human comes to us. How convenient. Roy's marks blazed with light. Power flowed through him, stronger than ever before. The trial, the healing, the endurance, all of it had been building to this moment. You are wrong about the Covenant, Roy said. It is not weakness. It is the strength to protect others, even when it costs you everything. The Ashborn leader lunged. Roy met the charge not with violence, but with purpose. His marks spread light through the corridor, blinding and beautiful. Pip breathed her first true flame, a stream of fire that forced the other Ashborn back. Roy did not try to kill. He defended, blocked, endured. Every strike the leader threw, Roy absorbed and healed from. Every attempt to break through to the bridge, Roy stopped. The other Ashborn warriors watched their leader grow frustrated and exhausted. Watched a human mechanic stand against their strongest fighter without hate or rage. Just steady, unwavering protection. Finally, the Ashborn leader stopped, breathing hard. "Why do you not fight back? Why do you not try to kill me?" "Because that is not what the marks mean," Roy said. "They are not about destruction. They are about saving people. Even people who do not deserve saving." He extended his hand. "You were exiled centuries ago for crimes I do not know. But you're still Dravine. You could still come home. Choose differently." The leader stared at Roy's hand. For a moment, something like hope flickered in ancient eyes. Then it died. "Too late for us," the leader said quietly. "But perhaps not for them." He gestured to the younger Ashborn warriors. "Stand down. All ships, cease fire. We surrender." The battle ended. The Ashborn warriors laid down their weapons. Their leader walked past Roy toward the bridge where a Shenwing waited. "Take them into custody," a Shenwing ordered. "They will face justice." "But Roy, what you offered, that took more courage than any fight." Roy collapsed against the wall, exhausted beyond measure. Pip curled around him protectively. The colony was saved. The Ashborn defeated. But more importantly, Roy had proven that the Covenant could change even those who seemed beyond redemption. Over the following weeks, Haven's Reach was rebuilt. Roy's sister and her family were relocated to a safer world under Dravine protection. The coalition of species that formed during the crisis began formal talks about permanent alliance. Roy stood in the Hall of Guardians on Ashenfell, no longer alone. 3 new beings had been marked after acts of selfless courage. A Quillen who saved miners from a collapsing shaft. A human woman who ran into radiation to seal a reactor leak. A being from a species humanity had never met, who sacrificed everything to protect refugees. Pip was grown now, a magnificent dragon who would soon take her place as queen. But she still called Roy her clutch parent and slept near his quarters every night. A Shenwing approached him as he watched the sunset paint Ashenfell's volcanoes gold. "You have changed our people, Roy Bennett. Changed the galaxy. The Covenant lives again because you showed us what it truly means." "I just did what anyone would do," Roy said. "No, most people would have evacuated that nursery. Most people would have stayed safe." A Shenwing smiled. "You are special precisely because you do not see yourself as special. That is the heart of the Covenant." Roy looked at the marks on his arms, now settled into permanent, beautiful patterns. He thought about the simple mechanic he used to be, about the impossible journey that started with a crying dragon hatchling. He recorded one final message to Earth, to the family he would always love, even from across the stars. "I found my purpose out here, not in being marked by dragons or bearing ancient magic, but in doing what felt right when I heard someone who needed help. That is all I ever did, and somehow it was enough." He sent the message and watched Pip practice flying over the city, her scales catching the light like sapphires. Roy Bennett, former mechanic, marked guardian, regent to the Dragon Queen, smiled. He was still human, still the same person who ran into fire without thinking, and that he finally understood was exactly what the galaxy needed.